I was diagnosed with attention deficit in November of 2024. I know a lot of people who are surprised when they hear that I have attention deficit. This is just me not wanting to study. I'm not dumb. At least that was my test. My score was 2 standard deviations below what's considered normal attention. I became over time really good at masking these symptoms. Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Serap. I am going to talk about attention deficit in this video. I was diagnosed with attention deficit in November of 2024, and I had no clue I had this disorder throughout my life. This video is not going to be about what to do, how to be productive, whether you have ADHD or not. I'm not an expert, but I want to talk about my own experience because I know a lot of people who are surprised when they hear that I have attention deficit. And that was a bit surprising to me as well, though not when I got the diagnosis. So a little bit about my background. I've been a good student, especially until college. I was a straight A student. I was the valedictorian of my high school. I did really well and I got into my dream school. Where I lived, where my parents lived, was in a small town. In our neighborhood, there were no other kids. There was really no distraction for me, no places I can go. It was really inconvenient for me to go meet with my friends, especially in high school. And that kind of made it easy for me to sit down and study. I didn't have a lot of responsibilities at home. Both of my parents wanted me and my sister to prioritize schoolwork. And that's what we did. And I didn't have any issues studying and getting good grades. However, my mom to this day still talks about how I used to leave everything to the last minute and study for an exam the night before, doing a big project the night before, pulling an all-nighter. And most of the times she stayed up with me because she's an amazing person, but she talks about this still. Back then I didn't think that was so unusual. I thought this is normal, this is what everyone does. Then I got into college. Everything changed. But biggest problem was that my English wasn't good, but the education language was English. First couple of years at college, my grades were really low. I was studying psychological counseling and it required me to read a ton, and my vocabulary wasn't good. My reading comprehension wasn't that good, but I didn't have the patience and stamina to sit down and read pages and pages and pages of academic text, even though I liked the classes. Yet I couldn't sit down and study. And there was so much to do around me. I was really active socially. I was singing in a choir. I was organizing concerts and things like that. So very busy social life, and I didn't want to study, even though I loved learning. I loved the subject I was studying. Towards the end of my time in college, I started questioning my intellect, and I started thinking that maybe I'm not smart, maybe that's why I'm so bad at this. And then I've decided that, you know what, I'm gonna try really hard for these 2 classes and see if anything changes, my grades change. And I forced myself to sit down and do the work. I've always done the work. I've never not delivered a homework, but I wouldn't spend as much time. I just, again, didn't have the patience for it. So what I did was, when I had an assignment, I did a thorough research. I wrote the paper. I went over it several times. I revised it. I ensured that I included everything that should be included, double-checked it, and submitted that way, and I got 100 on it. Another class, I did the same. So then I thought, okay, this is just me not wanting to study. I'm not dumb. At least that was my test. And after college, I got into graduate school. I don't know how I did with those grades that I had in college, but I got into graduate school because ever since I remembered, I wanted to be a scientist. And I liked psychology, so I got into a cognitive psychology master's program in Europe. I got there, I had the same problem. I was having a hard time sitting and doing the readings, and there were lots of readings. But I did okay there. I think I became a little bit better at forcing myself to do the boring work. Even though the subject wasn't boring, sitting down and reading it was boring. And I'm saying this as someone who loves reading, yet reading these academic tests, scientific papers was really difficult for me. I did okay. I didn't have the best GPA, but it was above average, and I did well. Submitted my master's thesis, and then I got into a PhD program. But PhD program was the same. I studied visual selective attention, and I find it really interesting. It's still fascinating. But a PhD student is supposed to be following the new publications, reading constantly, thinking about it. I didn't do that. It just didn't feel like it. And again, I did okay, but I wasn't a good student. I think a good PhD student is more proactive, and they read a lot, and then they come up with all sorts of ideas to try. I wasn't like that. I just did the bare minimum to get the PhD. And I did an okay job too. Like, I did really well on my qualification exams. That went really nicely. And I didn't have any issues with my dissertation defense. After I defended, there wasn't anything I needed to revise and do anything. It was immediately accepted. I had my PhD, but I never felt like I was doing particularly good. And I think my PhD advisor would agree with that. I got jobs, and my first job was similar. I had a hard time getting things done. I was okay. And then I got my job in UX field. I had a hard time finishing things on time, but I was randomized. But that was also the job where I had a really toxic manager. But as time passed, I learned how to deal with the situation. And in my last job, I was really successful. After I had kids, I started learning about ADHD. How women experience ADHD is different than how men do. And then what types of things that people might be going through if they have ADHD. So I started doing the research, and I started reading others. And then I started thinking about my own life and the experiences I had. And it made sense that I had a sort of attention-related problem. I know I'm not hyperactive, so I never thought that I had ADHD, but I suspected then strongly that I might have attention deficit disorder. So I sought professional help. When I talked to the provider, his first reaction was, I don't think you have it. People who have ADHD experience really detrimental things. Their marriage might be falling apart, they might be getting fired, they fail school. You have none of those things. You were able to get a PhD, you're successful at your work. I really don't think you have it. First, I accepted that, but it made me feel really depressed. The reason was I knew something was up because, to give you an example, we had our house renovated during the pandemic, and it was a big renovation. We had to move out, and then after a year we moved back in. And to this day there are still boxes unopened in my garage and in my basement, and there are certain areas of the house such a huge mess, and I hate mess. Yet every time I think about cleaning up, unboxing those things, it just gives me anxiety. I even tried, okay, if I open one box a day and clear it out every day, eventually this will be done. But even that didn't work, because then when I opened the box and there were things in there that are not mine, my husband had to go through. That meant I cannot put away that box immediately, and I would be overwhelmed. So next time I met with this provider, I told him all of these and how this makes me nervous, and how I cannot do two things at once, and it makes me nervous. For example, washing the dishes and having a conversation with my kids makes me extremely nervous. I can't do it, and I cannot block one. And I said, okay, this doesn't sound normal to me. So then he told me, okay, if this is making you so upset, why don't we do a standardized test? And there is this neuropsych evaluation. False positive rate is really low. We did this test. When he came back to me with the results, he said that he was extremely surprised by the results, because my score was 2 standard deviations below what's considered normal attention level. That made me sad to have it, definitively, but also gave me some kind of relief that, okay, I wasn't imagining all these things that I cannot do are due to this condition. It's not that I'm this person who can't get her life in order. The reason I told this story is this. I became over time really good at masking these symptoms. So I was failure averse, even though I learned the best from failures. I did everything not to fail. And for me, starting a school and not finishing was not an option, especially considering I liked the content. So I did my best. I tortured myself to sit and study, and I would be unhappy, but I did it. And by the time I accomplished something, not graduating or finishing a big project at work, that gave me the reward that I needed to continue. So if you have symptoms similar to this, consider having a neuropsych evaluation or talking to someone. I do take medication that allows me to sit down and read boring texts, and I'm grateful for that because I really love learning about things. I have been learning literature theory, and without the pill I just can't read it. And now I have been making a lot of progress in the house, and I don't get overwhelmed easily. I'm also doing cognitive behavioral therapy because medication is effective only to a certain extent, and I want to know the strategies that I can use to change my behavior and get things done. I still have a lot that I need to learn, I want to get done, and one of the things that I learned is that I'm trying to do too much and I need to prioritize. And I was good at it at work, and I need to become good at it at my personal life of doing things selectively and not trying to do everything. Anyway, with that, I'm gonna end this video here. I hope this was helpful to someone. And if you have your experiences with how you masked your ADHD or ADD and what helped you, go through the process, if you feel like it, please comment below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.